Flash report from Avdiivka: Russian armor just took a direct hit. 2 vehicles destroyed. 1 main battle tank is burning, with Russian assault teams pinned down in the open. This was no massive push, nor did it redraw the map. But make no mistake, tactical dynamics are shifting rapidly across the Donetsk sector. Ukrainian operators are executing high-speed, high-impact, hit-and-run strikes. They hit hard, then disengage, and hammer the target again before Russian forces can consolidate their defense. Near the Avdiivka sector, elements of the 47th Mechanized Brigade deployed Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. They executed a highly dangerous maneuver that actually relied on flawless, split-second combat timing. The critical takeaway is not just the count of smoking Russian armor left on the field. Rather, it is how Ukrainian units synchronize battlefield reconnaissance, armored assets, and strike drones to force the enemy into a defensive crouch, despite their massive superiority in artillery and manpower. Every Russian countermove was sluggish and bled dry. If this operational pattern holds, the battle for Avdiivka will become a textbook demonstration of how the Donetsk front is being systematically ground down, yard by yard, rather than broken in one massive blow. This leaves you and me with one critical question. Was this skirmish a fluke? Or are we witnessing the birth of a lethal new doctrine on this battlefield? Avdiivka is a vital strategic anchor. Its location ensures that any localized engagement immediately becomes a brutal stress test for both armies. Positioned on Donetsk's doorstep, this fortified hub acts as a violent collision point where rural trenches smash directly into massive industrial complexes. Consequently, even minor tactical shifts here send shockwaves far beyond a single tree line. To Russian forces, this city is far more than a simple map coordinate. It is a critical gateway to neutralize Ukrainian artillery strikes on Donetsk and shield their deep rear logistics from relentless fire. Pushing through this sector allows enemy forces to dramatically shorten supply lines, stabilize key defensive flanks, and register a high-profile propaganda win near the most politically sensitive city in the entire region. For Ukrainian command, the calculus is entirely different. They do not view this land as sacred soil to be held at all costs. Instead, tactical planners use it as a meat grinder, where Russian assaults are channeled, slowed, and decimated in sharp, costly engagements. This doctrine explains why this sector remains a boiling cauldron, even without any massive theater-wide offensive operations underway. The geography itself dictates this reality. Avdiivka is ringed by shattered industrial plants, dense tree lines, and heavily exposed approaches. These choke points penalize massive armor columns, while heavily favoring agile, fast-reacting units. On this ground, numerical superiority is neutralized. Operational success relies entirely on timing, squad coordination, and close-quarters fire control. Any unit that hesitates or delays its reaction will see its armor vaporized and positions overrun instantly. Enemy assault groups near Avdiivka are forced to maintain momentum, knowing that stalling out means instant aerial detection and devastating artillery strikes. Yet, overextending means driving straight into pre-registered kill zones where Ukrainian heavy weapons are already dialed in on their coordinates. This lethal dilemma leaves a razor-thin window for offensive action, and any failure results in catastrophic losses that cannot be hidden. Ukrainian defenders have adapted to this brutal ecosystem by abandoning rigid, static defense lines to actively dictate enemy movement. Rather than blocking every trench, they force Russian field commanders into costly, split-second choices that drain their armor, manpower, and momentum. Every attempt to probe lines or reinforce positions becomes a trap rather than a step forward. This strategy does not demand holding every single trench line indefinitely. It demands real-time intelligence, lightning-fast maneuvers by highly mobile strike forces, and the operational discipline to disengage the moment the tactical mission is accomplished. Avdiivka provides the perfect geography and target density to execute this high-intensity warfare, which is why the city remains a blood-soaked prize. This yields a fluid front line that is never quiet, yet rarely shifts in massive territorial leaps. Instead, the pressure climbs through constant engagements where the enemy bleeds out just by trying to advance. This is why you and I must watch Avdiivka. Even minor skirmishes here signal broader tactical shifts across the theater. The combat unfolding here is not about securing a sudden dramatic breakthrough. It is about controlling the combat tempo and cost inside an arena where every single mistake is fatal. In this sector, tactical errors are instantly fatal. We measure progress in minutes, not kilometers. The opening advance near Avdiivka demonstrates how situational awareness and precise timing dictate the battle before a shot is fired. Ukrainian assault elements did not advance blindly or rely solely on raw speed. Their vanguard movement relied on deep aerial reconnaissance, with drones monitoring roads and tree lines, mapping out hostile firing points well before armor crossed the start line. Persistent surveillance allowed battle captains to map Russian artillery cycles, exploiting lulls and identifying gaps in enemy targeting data. The order to push was given during a critical window, before enemy batteries could lock onto exact coordinates. Once Bradley fighting vehicles moved out, their advance was methodical, controlled, and tightly coordinated. Drivers hugged defilade routes, using terrain contour and ruined structures to mask their approach from enemy observers. This starved Russian forward observers of the time needed to adjust fires and relay coordinate corrections. Reaching the dismount point, the transition from movement to violent contact was immediate and seamless. Troops rapidly dismounted and dispersed, fanning out in all directions to mitigate the threat of mass casualties from a single shell. They avoided bunching near the hulls, denying the enemy any static target for incoming barrages. Every fire team executed precise, short-distance dashes, maintaining high tempo and keeping the initiative. Russian defensive fires responded almost instantly upon detecting the dismount. Shrapnel blanketed the zone, but the incoming fire pattern was scattered and highly imprecise. Impact craters scarred open fields and dead space, missing the active infantry lanes entirely. This indicates enemy gunners were firing blindly on acoustic or general cues rather than active real-time targeting. The bombardment was heavy and disorienting, but failed to achieve significant tactical effect. For these assault teams, those opening seconds were far more critical than raw firepower. Even as shells impacted wide, the fire teams pressed forward instead of taking cover. Exploiting the smoke and concussion for concealment, they closed the distance to the enemy trench line. Every meter gained during that window degraded the utility of delayed enemy fire corrections. For the defenders, the tactical situation deteriorated by the second. Once troops breached the tree line, calling down fire risked hitting friendly lines or wasting precious ordnance. The window to decisively neutralize the assault had officially slammed shut. This engagement illustrates how modern battles are won or lost before main forces collide. The commander controlling intelligence and timing can render even massive enemy artillery barrages completely ineffective. The assault force did not require artillery dominance. They only needed sufficient time to cross the danger space and force close-quarters combat. By the time the defending batteries corrected their aim, the tactical reality had shifted. Assault elements were already dispersed, maneuvering through cover, and prepping for the final breach. The insertion phase concluded with Ukrainian troops occupying dominant, highly defensible close-in positions. What seemed to be a simple, rapid dash was a highly calculated maneuver driven by superior intelligence, not blind speed. This initial choreography near Avdiivka proved decisive. These opening actions did not guarantee victory, but they eliminated the Kremlin's best opportunity to crush the assault early. Once that window closed, the battle shifted entirely to Ukraine's terms. Close quarters combat exposed critical structural vulnerabilities within Russian armored formations during the next phase. As the assault troops consolidated their gains, the adversary rushed tactical reserves toward the line of contact to regain control. 2 BTR 82A. Personnel carriers advanced along a direct axis, maximizing speed over tactical protection, suggesting a desperate rush to reach the hot zone. This compromised their tactical flexibility, leaving the heavy transports with no room to maneuver once committed to this linear approach corridor. Ukrainian Bradley crews detected this advance early, immediately pivoting their main guns to engage the incoming threats. At point-blank range, our Bradley did not need to maneuver. The targets were already completely exposed in the open. Direct fire hammered the target with absolute precision. The lead BTR took a catastrophic hit and stopped dead. Flames and black smoke erupted as their momentum vanished instantly. The second BTR followed the same path, meeting the exact same brutal end. Before the crew could react or deploy their infantry under cover, we struck and disabled it too. Their planned reinforcement surge collapsed into a devastating loss of armor within mere moments. This engagement proves how linear movement under direct observation turns speed into a deadly vulnerability. With both armored carriers neutralized, the surviving Russian infantry were forced out into the brutal open, stripped of mobile cover, hostile troops scattered across exposed ground, scrambling for any cover they could find. This was the critical tipping point. Dismounted infantry lost all protection from incoming fire and fragmentation. The battlefield shifted instantly from organized operations to raw survival, crippling the enemy's ability to coordinate any follow-up actions. Meanwhile, a fresh firefight erupted along a neighboring axis. One of our Bradleys in a support role locked onto an armored target at close range. With the position confirmed, our crew launched a heavy anti-tank missile, smashing the enemy vehicle before it could reposition or bring its guns to bear. That strike eliminated another armored threat from the sector, squeezing enemy tactical options even tighter. We then detected additional Russian infantry fighting vehicles dug into static positions. Our Bradley immediately engaged with heavy direct fire, obliterating at least one enemy BMP during the ferocious exchange. Every single loss took the pressure off our defending infantry, making it impossible for the enemy to stabilize the line. What made this phase highly decisive was not raw volume of fire, but the relentless sequence of tactical execution. Enemy armor charged in after our forces had already established total situational awareness and superior firing angles. By the time those BTRs arrived, the kill zone allowed them absolutely no safe deployment or support options. This intense, close-range clash exposed a much larger tactical failure. Heavy vehicles designed to rapidly deploy troops completely fail when caught by early detection and accurate fire. Lacking coordination, smoke screens, or layered support, these machines became easy prey instead of tactical assets. For our forces on the ground, this critical moment proved the tide had turned in our favor. The enemy armor was shattered, infantry pressure evaporated, and we seized total control of the initiative. The guns did not fall silent, but the final direction of this fight was already decided. Our strategic withdrawal phase highlights a massive contrast in tactical thinking once local objectives were fully secured. After crushing the enemy armor and relieving our forward infantry, our units did not try to hold ground at all costs. Instead, our commanders prioritized high-speed mobility and saving troop lives, executing this tactical disengagement as an active combat phase, never as a sign of weakness. This was vital because the brutal Avdiivka front ruthlessly punishes any units that linger in the open. Our Bradleys played a central, decisive role during this critical moment. Instead of executing a rapid retreat, they kept pouring heavy, suppressed fire onto known Russian positions, completely stopping the enemy from pursuing or organizing a counterattack. This relentless pressure carved out a safe corridor for our infantry to pull back in organized stages, maintaining tight spacing under our absolute command. The retreat was a calculated sequence, not a panic, eliminating chaos under heavy enemy stress. As our infantry fell back, Russian forces desperately tried to break our lines with anti-tank missiles and heavy mortar barrages. We watched one Bradley execute evasive maneuvers as an incoming missile locked on, dodging a direct hit by changing speed and direction. Seconds later, mortar rounds detonated right where it had been, but the crew had already shifted positions. These maneuvers are not luck, they are elite, split-second combat responses built on deep tactical mastery. But another Bradley faced a grimmer outcome. In the chaos, it sustained multiple direct hits that crippled its tracks and forced a total halt. Even after a mobility kill that heavy armor held, the crew remained intact inside, with 0 initial casualties reported. We can confirm that crippled Bradley was not abandoned. A third rig swept in, extracted the crew, and withdrew under cover. This right here shows why vehicle survivability matters, even when a platform is knocked out. On paper, any immobilized asset is written off as a combat loss. But keeping veteran crews alive preserves the real combat power far beyond the steel. Here, rapid casualty recovery prevented a simple tactical setback from spiraling into a catastrophic loss of life. During the retreat, Ukrainian units disciplined their withdrawal, preventing a chaotic pursuit. Bradley gunners laid down highly disciplined, suppressive fire, prioritizing area denial over raw destruction. Hold the line just long enough to secure the exit route. Then slip away before Russian command could organize a counterstrike. Reports show the enemy struggled to exploit the gap. Lacking heavy armor and operating under constant drone surveillance, any attempt to push forward was a massive gamble. Direct exposure drew immediate counterfire, effectively halting the enemy's aggressive pursuit. As we observe this, it is clear modern combat does not end when contact breaks. Breaking contact is just as lethal as the assault. A bad retreat often inflicts heavier casualties than the battle itself. Ukrainian commanders planned for this brutal reality, using tactical training and heavy armor to mitigate risk rather than chasing symbolic victories. The payoff was a clean extraction that saved lives and assets, all while maintaining active suppressive pressure. Instead of a chaotic rout under fire, this tactical withdrawal allowed them to dictate the tempo. In a high-intensity war measured in minutes and meters, tactical control outweighs holding any single piece of dirt. The pressure did not stop there. Intelligence indicates Ukrainian commanders treated this withdrawal as a tactical reset, not a pause. Once the infantry and armored assets broke direct contact and reset, commanders immediately began reshaping the battle space, deploying a mix of armor, heavy drones, and persistent recon. Bradleys quickly redeployed alongside Abrams' main battle tanks, merging high-speed mobility with heavy frontal armor and devastating firepower to dominate this highly contested, narrow sector. This hunter-killer pairing allowed Ukrainian units to threaten multiple axes simultaneously while staying mobile and difficult to target. As these armor columns moved, attack drones swarmed overhead, locking down key approach routes. These drones did not just strike targets, they actively secured critical roads and open fields. The moment Russian armor attempted to push forward, these drones directed precision artillery or struck directly, forcing enemy drivers to halt, panic, and abort. Every second of enemy hesitation shattered their coordination, leaving them sitting ducks for follow-on strikes. This relentless aerial threat fundamentally changed how Russian forces reacted after the initial clash. Instead of rapid battlefield regrouping, enemy commanders were forced to split focus between ground and sky. Move, and you draw drone strikes. Stay still, and artillery maps you for destruction. This crushing tension made every decision costly, completely stalling their offensive momentum. Bradley and Abrams' crews exploited this chaos, dominating the battle space without committing to a full-scale assault. They pushed forward to threaten key lines, then relocated before becoming predictable targets. They unleashed selective fire, not to capture dirt, but to choke corridors and disrupt enemy timing. The cumulative toll was devastating, forcing Russian forces to burn critical resources for absolutely zero tactical gain. Attack drones remained the absolute cornerstone, keeping this relentless pressure dialed up. By scouting ahead of the armor, they cleared the battlefield fog, letting vehicles push forward confidently. When aerial feeds detected fresh enemy movement, the armor instantly adjusted, neutralizing threats before they could develop. This deadly synergy did not require massive troop concentrations or prolonged, risky exposure, yet it kept the front line completely unstable, forcing Russian commanders into a brutal dilemma. Massing their forces meant instant detection and destruction, while dispersing meant they lacked the strength to fight back. Attempts to reinforce exposed sectors trigger instant drone strikes, neutralizing movement before direct contact even occurs. Over time, this brutal dynamic makes it impossible to seize initiative without accepting massive casualty rates. What stands out in this operational phase is calculated restraint. Ukraine did not push for a massive breakthrough or try holding exposed ground overnight. Instead, they focused on maintaining tactical advantage through relentless localized pressure, keeping actions just below the threshold of a major offensive. This doctrine preserves frontline forces while keeping Russian units under constant, grueling strain. The hot zone around Avdiivka is no longer about lines on a map, it is about dictating tactical options. Every single Russian maneuver carries extreme risk, while Ukrainian defenders retain total freedom to strike when and where they choose. That tactical balance keeps Ukraine active, without escalating into a bloody, high-cost offensive. Ultimately, Tactical pressure has become a continuous tool rather than a single event. By coordinating heavy armor and drones post-withdrawal, Ukrainian units ensure the grinding combat never truly pauses. The battle shifts shape, drops tempo, and remains highly unpredictable, keeping control in local hands without risking massive manpower. This brutal fighting near Avdiivka was never meant to be a dramatic, map-altering turning point, and no major front line collapsed in a single night. It demonstrates how Ukraine is rewriting the rules of engagement on the Donetsk front, applying relentless pressure without paying the devastating price of holding every exposed trench with massive casualties. Instead of digging in and waiting to be shelled, Ukrainian squads strike fast, then execute controlled withdrawals, only to hit back before Russian forces can recover. This doctrine turns time into a weapon. Every Russian countermove arrives late, costs more blood, and resolves nothing. For Russia, the critical challenge is no longer just replacing incinerated armor or sending wave after wave of fresh recruits. They face a modern warfare paradigm where reaction speed dictates survival as much as raw firepower, and where every delay leaves them exposed to precision drones, heavy armor, and brutal follow-on strikes. Massed artillery and human waves still play a role, but they cannot save forces crippled by slow coordination and predictable maneuvers. If this pattern continues, the wider battle for Donetsk will not be decided by massive offensives, but by surgical moments where one side dictates the tempo and options. That tactical uncertainty is why the Avdiivka sector remains critical. Are we witnessing an isolated, localized clash, or the dawn of an entirely new tactical phase on the Donetsk front? Report your assessment in the comments below. For raw, unbiased reporting on real-world engagements, advanced weapons system intelligence, this brutal fighting near Avdiivka was never meant to be a dramatic, map-altering military force.